Welcome, everyone, to cbuzz, the award-winning podcast presented by the Columbus Chamber of Commerce and proudly recognized as Columbus's very first business-focused podcast. We're thrilled to bring you the show in partnership with Capital University. I'm Mikaela Hunt, your host and brand journalist for cbuzz, where we dive into compelling stories of the leaders who are really shaping Central Ohio's vibrant business community. Today, we are inside the Convergent Media Center at Capital University, a really dynamic space where students and faculty collaborate on music, film, creative writing, and digital media projects. We are so excited to share these incredible stories with you from this innovative hub. And I want to welcome our guests today to the show, Sam Storts and Chimdi Chekwa, co-founders of BILT Connections. Now, Sam is one of the original co-founders of BILT Connections, with connections to the NIL world. You'll hear about that in a minute. Joining in June of 23 from Sugar Grove, the small town in rural Southeast Ohio. He's a 2018 graduate of The Ohio State University, where he majored in biological engineering with a minor in science, engineering, and public policy. Now, Sam worked several jobs while he was in college, which really exposed him to a variety of individuals and resources that led to help him. And after hearing him speak on a podcast, he asked Chimdi to join him in this venture. Chimdi is one of the original co-founders of BILT Connections as well, joining in June of 23. He's a 2011 graduate of The Ohio State University, where he was an All-American cornerback from 2006 to 2011. He went on to play for 6 seasons in the NFL. He received his MBA from the University of Miami during his time spent playing with the Miami Dolphins. Chimdi and BILT Connections' third co-founder, Brian Browning, owned and operated the Pit Barbecue restaurant, which was delicious. And we have 2 of the 3 co-founders in studio again. Sam and Chimdi, welcome to cbuzz. So good to have you here.
Thanks for having us. This is exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be a good conversation. We're going to talk about the future of NIL. So we know NIL, but there is a future associated with it that I don't know if many people are thinking about. How shifting from those paycheck-style deals to equity investments is transforming athletes into entrepreneurs, strengthening communities, and sparking some major business growth. So first of all, for those who are unfamiliar with the term, I think a lot of people know, but for those who are unfamiliar, what exactly is NIL, Chimdi?
Yeah, so for so long, and I experienced it myself, college athletes were amateur athletes and weren't able to receive any type of additional benefits outside of their scholarship and, whatever team issued the things they were able to receive. There was a lawsuit, and, there's been some energy around fighting that for a while. But that essentially opened up the opportunity for college athletes, to earn money off their name, image, and likeness. So, they can use their personal brand to earn additional money. And, most of the opportunities come by way of marketing deals with businesses and others. But there's also kind of a loophole now as well for teams to pay the player through utilizing that name, image, and likeness to generate money for the individual player. So it's just a new world of college sports, one that I wasn't able to partake in as a player myself, but one that I'm looking forward to opening up new opportunities to stimulate business growth and use some of that energy in the sport for both the athlete and the business benefit.
Because you probably know what you would have done had you had this opportunity.
Oh, yeah, I definitely know what I would have done. I mean, the interesting thing, we talked to Sam about it, I was a business student. Right, and as a college student playing football early on, I didn't know how far my career was going to go. Right, and then over time you're going through school, and then you get on the field, and then you do well on the field, and then you have your jersey in stores, and people asking you for autographs, and now I'm going to finance and marketing classes, and I'm realizing I'm not really maximizing this opportunity that exists. And then you go even further than that, get to the NFL, and every city I played in, there's someone that was an Ohio State fan asking for an autograph, asking for different things. And I was like, I never really maximized my brand in college, which, interestingly enough, especially for like a cornerback, really kind of peaked in college because of the passion around Ohio State football. So always had that passion to come back and see how can I get the current players to start really exploring entrepreneurship in a way that can, utilize their brand. But the challenge was, any type of benefit was a violation. So
right.
That's changed.
That's changed. Sam, NIL is often criticized as being the Wild West, as we were kind of alluding to right there. So let's talk about BILT Connections and how it comes into all of this. How is BILT Connections re-envisioning the industry from that transactional handout towards a more supplementary, sophisticated, equity-based model? Like, there is something very nuanced and unique that I feel like you're doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you see a lot of gray area in the current world of NIL. So there's not a lot of rules, not a lot of structure. There's kind of imaginary rules that are not really being enforced all that well. So that's kind of what they call the Wild West, and everyone's trying to take advantage of this. Everyone's trying to stay competitive. You have all these programs across the country trying to grow, trying to retain talent, and trying to find structure around it and obey rules that they might not know about. So what we're doing is really trying to shift from transactional to more partnerships. So we want these athletes to have a stake in the brands they're representing. So when your business is making these investments into their marketing, they are not really going into it so blindly. They see that these athletes have this great platform. They do a lot of great things. They have a background that supports them and a future that could be really bright. So like Chimdi said, he was one of very few athletes that had that NFL future. So he made that league. But even then, it's only an average of 3-year career. So we really have to get someone ready to face the rest of their life. So what we're really trying to do is with these partnerships, they can start looking at the next 25, 30, 45 years until they retire from a career to prepare them.
So there's a stake in the business. It's more than just getting paid in the moment. It's a stake in the business that you're working with for a longer period of time. I might be oversimplifying it.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's what it is. And, what you realize, especially me being a former athlete and over time, there is a lot of energy from football, being a football fan. There's a lot of individuals that want to impact the sport. And from a NIL standpoint, a marketing standpoint, some of these players have an opportunity, have a window of opportunity to really use their brand and attract growth for some of these businesses that are pretty good businesses that have a good growth opportunity, but really need the marketability. And you kind of creating a bigger relationship where there's an equity deal there, and that athlete becomes a part owner. All right, they can generate some influence that can support that business and support them beyond that 3, 4, 5, and sometimes 6-year college.
So it's
career.
A really intriguing idea for a local business owner to hear about this, who might be listening to this podcast. The idea of giving equity instead of or with cash, super intriguing. So how does this local business advantage, if you will, actually mitigate risk in marketing spend for a small to medium enterprise? I think there's something there for these businesses to hear about.
Yeah, like we said, it's something that we didn't invent. So an equity for service agreement has been around for a long time. There's a lot of success stories around it. You think of Facebook when they wanted to market by using graffiti. When they're out in California, they wanted to hire a graffiti artist, and he wanted to charge them, an X amount of dollars. And they said, well, we don't really want to pay that, but we'll give you some shares. And I think, 6 years later, their shares ended up being like $200 million. So you see how it works out really well for them in the end. And not every business will be a Facebook, obviously, but getting the experience and getting the early reps in entrepreneurship, running a business, having a cap table, keeping track of your expenditures and income, it's really irreplaceable. It's something that they cannot really get in a classroom. But now you put the student back in student athlete, so we can really start getting these young people developed and ready for a life ahead of them.
So your slogan is communities built, BILT, by NIL. Chimdi, how does this really change the economic landscape of a college town? So you have it changing the athlete relationship in the partnership, but how does it actually change what we're looking at throughout Columbus and Central Ohio?
Yeah, if you look at how much of the economy is generated from college sports, it's significant, right? And there's not even with that direct tie to the actual players who are putting on, a lot of the entertainment being directly tied to these businesses. There's a real opportunity to stimulate growth for some of these small businesses by creating a much closer tie with the athletes. And it doesn't always have to be a one-for-one type situation. It could be multiple athletes that are a part of a business. It could be multiple athletes across multiple sports as well. And depending on how closely the business is related to the athlete in terms of what type of business it is, right? Because you also want to find the right fit. But if the fit is right, organically, that ability to grow organically, and for the athlete and the business marketing approach to be one that is real. There's a real opportunity there, and I think that it's just a missing. There's like a gap here in the relationship between those athletes who are consumers, and they're also influencers on the other side, and their relationship with the businesses.
Donor fatigue has become a real thing in today's NIL ecosystem. Why do you think it's taken so long for the industry to realize that athletes can often make really great business partners and kind of, get rid of some of that gap, if you will, rather than disconnected spokespeople? Like, what's the deal there?
Yeah, I think it's an incomplete connection, like Chimdi started to talk about.
Yeah.
So we have this economic engine here at Ohio State and Columbus especially that has a hugely well-known brand that is globally recognized. And there's a small business community right here as well that's really doing a great job at being this new Silicon Valley of the heartland. So we're trying to put those two things together, and I think that part of it has to do with them being college students. I think we don't really see them in the same way that they were maybe back when we were in school. They're really learning a lot. They're getting a lot more mature earlier. They're trying to take the most of their opportunities they're given. And they're turning into these really well-rounded business people that are starting at a really young age. And they might be getting a little bit, underestimated. So now we can get them introduced to this whole world and have a nice controlled environment that they can get started in, and we can bring that impact.
So it sounds like there might be some possibilities even with things like affordable housing and commercial real estate as a future endeavor for you guys. How would an NIL deal evolve into like a community revitalization project? You guys have some really interesting ideas.
Yeah, if you look at former athletes, guys like Mike Doss, guys like Maurice Claret, these are guys who are putting together investments, doing some of the affordable real estate things, and that's an easy connection with current athletes, right? One, from the ability just to show them the path, right? While they're in a position right now. The other thing we talk about with NIL, athletes are actively generating income as well. So, understanding how to invest those funds, understanding how to utilize them is one thing that they get out of this journey. But also being able to bring together a fund, being able to raise funds for a project that is going to generate a return on investment. We talk about donor fatigue and, an opportunity for someone who's donating money or wants to impact athletes. There's also the possibility to get a return on some of that investment money. And that's what the type of deals and type of things we're trying to bring together.
Yeah, there's a part of it too where these athletes are now business owners. So if you invest in those businesses, you're supporting the athletes similar to how you would if you wrote a check for an NIL fund. So now you can invest in this business that's in your community, has a chance to grow, and even the boosters can now be part owners of that through our SPV models that we're doing, our special purpose vehicles. So through us, we're able to try to get that organized and see if we can maybe get some sponsorship for these boosters and find new ways that we can turn them into investors rather than just donors.
This is so innovative. Is this happening in other states? Like what you guys are doing, are you aware of other businesses operating in this way?
Not structured like this. I don't think they have the full picture of what we are doing. So we're a pretty big conglomerate, as you can see. We've got all these legs doing different things. We've relied a lot on connections. That's been our biggest ally, is really just talking to anyone and everyone and seeing what they're into, seeing what athletes are looking to make that next stage of their life, and finding ways that we can utilize this new world to make an opportunity for them to engage with it. So we've done our research. There's some people doing some equity for service agreements for NIL athletes, but when it comes to doing it at this scale and with the plans to go nationwide that we haven't really seen it. We haven't seen the structure.
Yeah, I spent some time playing for the Raiders in Silicon Valley, connecting with VCs. Ben Horowitz and Andreessen Horowitz did a pretty good job of bringing entertainers and venture capitalists together. So that's kind of a similar model in being able to raise money, identify startups, and invest in those startups. But those were professional athletes. With NIL, the opportunity is to start even sooner with a group of individuals that are even more passionate about the sport and college fans and the community around that university.
Yeah, because your model ensures that even if an athlete never goes pro, they leave university as a seasoned venture partner and business owner.
Yeah, and they've started to explore entrepreneurship. They started to grow in that way, and they're able to now reach back and support the next athlete in doing the same thing. So the model never really comes to an end.
Let's talk a little bit about that. What I see is giving back to the college athletic community that is being missed in some of these maybe other ventures. How are you reestablishing the primary mission of developing young people through college athletics? It feels like there is a new vein into what you could be thinking about as a college athlete. But
yeah. I mean, I think I know Sam alluded to it. You really, I mean, when I was a college student, the time I had for school was really secondary to football. It was, right?
I've heard you have really great tutors to help you through school, but like it's a career to do it.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard off the record.
Listen.
Not off the record, but on background.
Listen, the football schedule and just the athlete schedule is tough. And then you have the school aspect to it. But now you add the element of NIL now, and players have to live up to the amount of money they're being able to generate.
Right.
So it really, or they lose it, right? So it is a lot of pressure there, and it's really hard to get the level of education. Even if you're doing the work, it's really hard to really extract the level of education that you really get it through a college experience. But once you're immersed in the entrepreneurship journey as part of your process, as just part of your experience, you are able to extract that. And that's one thing I felt like I missed as a business student. I knew nothing about real business until I finished as a professional athlete and then dove into entrepreneurship. And I really want to start that journey much sooner.
These.
I think learning by doing is really what's taking over everywhere, not even just for athletes, but you see all these professional development and workforce development, projects coming to universities. I think it's really taking hold that people want to do things to actually learn it and maybe not just sit in a classroom and listen to it, but once they can apply it, that's when it really starts to stick.
For the athletes you're working with, what have you seen, Sam, is the psychological difference for a 19-year-old athlete when they aren't just the face, but they're a partner in business growth? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, it makes you mature. It makes you have to realize that anything you do is going to reflect upon this business you own. It's not something that you can just throw up on Instagram and forget about it, get your check and walk away. But now the more you do, the better you do it, the more you're going to get the payoff in the end. So really what we're trying to do is get them to understand that this is a long game. We're trying to get them to make other people succeed with their success. So we're looking for that universal impact that can really get the economy spurned.
So let's talk a little bit about the BILT program. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so this involves licensing university technology. So there's a gap that you're trying to bridge between high-level academic research and the elite athletic influence to create new tech startups. So I want to talk about that portion of the business. So what can you tell me about this?
Oh, this has been really awesome. It's been kind of putting all of these worlds together. So obviously there's billions of dollars in university research expenditures across the country. They fall into these TRL levels, the technology readiness levels, where it's going from prototype to essentially a saleable product. And between about TRL 4 to 7, when you're going from prototype to something you can sell, there's what they call the valley of death. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can get across that valley of death. And the problem that a lot of universities have is the professors and researchers coming up with these great technologies don't have the time or honestly even the interest in running a business. They just kind of want to do their studies, do some lab work and teach, but they're looking for these business professionals to come in, take these technologies and then work on the business side of things to take to the next level. So what we realized is before 2021, there's a bunch of athletes that never got NIL, and they're still maybe looking for this next opportunity. Maybe they found a sales job they don't love, but it was just what came to them, and they're looking for something else. So we can go to them and say, hey, look, Ohio State has all these great technologies that are just ready to be licensed. All we have to do, go talk to our guy, Jay Dahlman there in the technology commercialization office. He shows us a bunch of great stuff. We license it, come up with a great deal with the university, and then we're off and running. And what we can do that's really interesting is find resources and put together all the people to make that company successful. So this new venture we spin out, we put a former athlete in charge of. We let them be the CEO and build it to their vision. We help them write proposals. We can go get funding for them from the state. We're working on programs to get them taught how to run a business. So we want them to understand what it's like to keep their books, to do the ins and outs of hiring and staffing and keeping everyone happy. And we're giving them all the resources to do so. Or we're trying to get them prototyping services from the university. So now you have that workforce development aspect of it when a everyday student gets to work on this project for a former student athlete that now has this great technology building. So we're building this really cool ecosystem based off of Ohio State research and technology, and then it's kind of being boosted by athletics. And now we have this successful venture built, and then we can go back and do our typical model where we do this equity exchange for marketing services with the current student athletes. So you start thinking about a former student athlete, a current student athlete working together on this venture. It's like a whole different type of relationship they're able to form.
I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of gobsmacked by that whole concept.
It's really cool.
You are literally taking former athletes, or maybe they're current athletes, but like in your walking through that valley of death to get the business concepts to the other side in terms of the public and consumption of whatever that is. Wow.
Yeah, Chimdi's got the first one rolling right now, actually, and we're really excited for it.
Yeah, I'm the first test case in this rebuild program, and as a former athlete, transitioned into an analyst role that really focused on food and agriculture, as well as doing some entrepreneurial things. And then, there was opportunity to license technology focused on succession planning for farmers, right? Which has been a focus from an analyst standpoint for a while, because there's a lot of risk in ag, because a lot of farmers who have a lot of assets, $1 million worth of assets, not a ton of cash typically, at some point will have to transition that business to the next generation. There's a lot of challenges in being able to get that done. So, we identified this, solution coming from professors out of Ohio State. We commercialized it. We have got it started. We're building the solution, and then we're going to bring it back to farmers in Ohio and to try to take it nationwide. I think one thing,
wow.
and Sam kind of brought this to my attention, working at CDME and helping individuals create prototypes and others, that a lot of former athletes are naturally entrepreneurs. Like the way they're wired with continuous improvement, able to handle some of the uncertainty from, bringing a startup from, the start to where the next phase is. They're well built for that process if they have some additional support and being able to take something to the next level. So, we're looking for other athletes, other former athletes. Some have already done their own startup thing and looking to do something else, to be a part of the rebuild program and identify other tech out of Ohio State that can be commercialized.
I'm so glad you gave that example. I grew up in farmland in central Illinois, and I know exactly what you're speaking of with these farmers and their industry. So, wow, that's a fantastic example.
Yeah, so Chimdi spoke to something that kind of got us all started that we might go back to. So I work for the Center for Design and Manufacturing Excellence at Ohio State, and what we would do is have full-time engineers with a plethora of undergraduate engineers working under us, and we could mentor them and do projects in industry from the Columbus Zoo up to NASA and defense. So when I was doing that, I got in touch with a lot of these former athletes that I had run into while I was at Ohio State, and they all had these ideas for a business, but they needed a prototype done. So they'd come to us and say, like, hey, I have this blocking pad. We want to make the second generation of it. So our students get really excited because they recognize the athlete, and we get a project going, and it's like, wow, these guys really are just great entrepreneurs. And one started telling the other, you started telling the other. Next thing you knew, we had 5 or 6 projects that were just former athletes. So that's when we started thinking NIL is now legal. We have athletes here that this is going to be them in 5, 6, 7 years. How do we get this started earlier? So Chimdi was a great example of that. We got Legacy Acres as that business that we got that started. We actually we wrote a proposal for the Department of Development TVSF grant, the Technology Validation Startup Fund. We were awarded that about 4 months ago. We've got Big Kitty Labs here in town actually doing our software development.
Kitty,
Big Kitty's great. We love those guys. So that's another great thing is we're able to petition for that money from the state and give that to the local businesses to do these services for us so we can help Chimdi become, this next big entrepreneur with this really great business. And then next thing you know, that business is investing back into the NIL for Ohio State, and we're just building boosters at that point.
The future. I can't believe we're talking about such innovative ideas already that other people aren't necessarily doing around the country. Which isn't that Central Ohio, though. You got to say that is we're the leaders. But the future vision, if BILT Connections scales to its full potential over the next 5 years, Chimdi, what does the relationship between a university, its city, and its athletes look like compared to today? And can you potentially scale that?
Yeah, for sure we can scale it. I think what you get is an economy that really has a foundation around the sport that's driving small business growth. And it's scalable, one, because what we talked about with universities, it's an issue with universities across the country where there's great tech that exists, and there's very limited energy to really take that from the university to the market. There's also, tons of areas like Columbus, Ohio, where there's just a lot of passion about the sport. And that passion extends beyond just the games on Saturday, right? It really does. And we can see that by how much money has gone directly to the school to support paying the players, right? You could see the money flowing, but they're limited as to how much they're actually getting. They're not getting the full amount of, what people are willing to put into the sport, and they can get the full amount by bringing some of the businesses. You think about like a coffee company that's local, that's already doing well, right? If they have the energy of some athletes who are promoting them and, are a part of this business, to think about the amount of fans who already drink the coffee who would be interested in a product like that, but now backed by their favorite players and their favorite team that realize that the impact is greater than just these players getting paid, but it's also growth in small business and long-term growth for the athlete. So that's the future vision, to be able to take that same concept nationwide and to be able to impact the small business community, which supports state employment and overall economic development, and also impact the athlete, not just in that 4 or 5 year window when they play the sport at the school, but beyond that long term.
Okay, so Sam, I know people who are listening that own a business and they're leaders, investors, they're going to want to get in on the ground floor of this shift. So what does the onboarding process look like for a new BILT partner?
Yeah, so that's pretty manual right now. So when we scale, we're trying to make this into a software that's more user-friendly and AI integrated that matches this automatically. But right now, it's just us looking for people that are good business owners that we believe in. And that's really what it comes down to, because it could be a business that, it's a very small percentage of them that are going to be really crazy successful. So we want to find someone that has the best chance and that we really believe in, so we can get those guys matched up. We talk to our players one-on-one. We get to know who they are, what their interests are, what their really brand is, and we try to match that up to these businesses as well as we can. So the way we're looking at it right now is really just trying to find through the Chamber of Commerce who their stars are, and then see if they're the ones that really need that next level elevation of a good marketing strategy. And then we connect them to these players that we have the previous relationship with. And we really just try to make that conduit between the business community and our athletes. And that's what it's going to look like nationwide in our eyes. Is we're going to have a BILT Eugene, we're going to have a BILT Austin, Texas. All these cities can really have that, and business community bridged right to their athletic program. And then you just have this really nice engine that's powered off the power of sports.
Awesome. What a great partner in the chamber. I totally see how that works. And yeah, you mentioned 2 big college towns to grow to. I love those. I love the aspiration. Okay, so one of the reasons we have conversations like the one we're having today is because we believe that continued personal and professional development is one of the most valuable aspects as a business leader. So I just want to hear real quickly what's influencing you lately. It could be a podcast, a book, show, involvement in some kind of group. So tell me what that is.
Yeah, so like we were talking earlier, I'm on the go a lot. I don't have a ton of time to read and watch things, but I do have a nice commute. So I really do a lot of podcasts, and my favorite right now is Highway to NIL.
Highway to NIL.
Keeps me up to date on all the new rules and changes and everything. And then the Acquired podcast is my favorite, to just start listening about businesses, because people can tell you all about that. You can read all the books about how to run a business, but there's really no black and white solution. Everyone's experience is different. So I just love hearing about these successful businesses and where they started, how they got to where they are, and the whole process along the way. I think those guys do a great job with that.
I feel like there's some Bon Jovi that should be behind Highway to NIL.
I think they should.
And Chimdi, how about you?
It's interesting. I've spent a lot of time recently actually kind of locked into, I train young athletes, young cornerbacks, high school and below. And all the stuff I'm watching are football-related things right now. Really trying to perfect developing those individuals, right? And my inspiration really has come from them, right? Seeing a kid in the 9th grade who I look and say, I don't know if he really has it, right? Over 3 years, really develop into a young man who now is not only a talented player who's worked hard at being that, but also ready to take on what we've been talking about and expanding the business and growing in that way. So that's been my inspiration primarily, and really look forward to seeing a bunch of young individuals, high school level now, be part of the BILT program at the next level.
Amazing. Well, Sam and Chimdi, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a fast half an hour. We appreciate your insights on what's next for NIL and these equity-driven partnerships and community-focused initiatives. It's so exciting. So just appreciate your time being here.
Oh, thank you for having us. This was great. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. The ripple of all of this on business growth is going to be amazing. So if those of you who are listening are eager to learn more about BILT Connections, you can visit www.biltconnections.com. That is BILT Connections.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you would take a moment to rate us and review us on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite platform. Your feedback really helps others discover our show and ensures we keep delivering the stories like this that matter most. cbuzz is brought to you in collaboration with Capital University. Deeply grateful to their talented students, faculty, and staff for their truly invaluable support in bringing this podcast to life. Once again, I'm Mikaela Hunt, your host for cbuzz, the Columbus Chamber of Commerce's premier business podcast. We can't wait to share more inspiring stories with you in our next episode.